welcome to my sewing room. We have all kinds of wonderful things for you today, including a lot of serger techniques. So here we go. This particular pillow is one of my very favorites. It's very creative, done with strips of fabric, strips of ribbon, and beautiful gold lame thread, beautiful decorative thread, and it's all done by Serger. Another lovely serger and sewing machine camisole, for the ladies of course, is this one. It has lots of serger techniques as well as some wing needle sewing machine techniques. Another lovely camisole, this time in white, is absolutely beautiful. Can you see the beautiful serger techniques, the gorgeous decorative threads, along with some trim, some purchased trim, and more decorative threads attaching the purchased trim to the serger, to the camisole. This adorable little child's dress has wonderful machine embroidery, which don't tell anybody because it looks just like hand embroidery, really, which embellishes the whole garment all the way down to the little ruffle on the bottom. Once again, for the ladies, a beautiful, beautiful nightgown, wonderful lacy fabric, and here is something real interesting. Where the pieces of lace and netting are joined in at a low bodice area, absolutely done all on the serger. And the last ladies item I have for you today is another beautiful robe, all warm and toasty for winter weather. This is what I really want to share with you. Do you see this gorgeous serger technique used to attach the lace? Isn't that pretty to go all the way around the neckline of this robe? Today, I'm very pleased to have as my guest Ann Riegel, National Director from the Baby Lock Sewing Machine Company, to share with you some wonderful, wonderful serger techniques. Ann, it is so good to have you on the show today, and I can't wait to see what you're going to do next.
Well, thank you very much, and I'm very happy to be here. What I'm going to show today is some decorative serging. Sergers, and maybe we should explain just a little bit what they do. It actually sews the seam, has blades that trims the seam allowance, and then overcasts the edge simultaneously. And many times it seems like that's appropriate for the inside of seams, but when you consider using that edging or that overcast edge for the outside, it can become very pretty. What I've brought today are a variety of different trims and laces that I'll show how to actually sew those side by side to create your very own yardage. It really does become a designer, one-of-a-kind fabric.
You know, I really love that piece over there. And as you say, it is a designer, one of a kind.
It really is, and every time I make one, it becomes a little bit different, you know, depending on the mood or the types of laces that you find. Now, what might not seem like an appropriate lace, really when you start looking through your scrap bin, and that's one of the things I love, is because just a short piece, you can start creating this wonderful fabric. I'll show first, or start first by sewing 2 layers of, this is a embroidered ribbon and then just a satin ribbon with edges that are clean finished or have a woven edge. And what I've done here is set up my serger for the rolled edge stitch, and I've used a decorative thread in the upper loop, or a metallic thread. Because these edges are finished, I don't really want to trim them. So on this particular serger that I have, I can actually turn a button or a dial and lock the blade so it doesn't cut the edge, and I'll use that as a guide for these 2 edges. Now, one of the things I should point out, and sometimes you know, you get carried away and forget, in creating this decorative edge on the outside, what you want to do is lay the 2 layers wrong sides together.
Oh gosh, okay.
You have to remember that. Now I'm going to go ahead and lift that for a little bit. Another thing that I'd like to point out, as you're serging with this rolled edge stitch and using this metallic thread, I always grab that thread tail at the beginning just to get it started. Now you can see how I'm just guiding these 2 edges side by side, just feeding them in. That decorative thread is rolling. That rolled edge actually wraps around these 2 edges, securing them. And then I have the beginning of my fabric.
It's just beautiful.
Now I like to to actually press each of these as I go along. Just makes it a little bit easier in the long run. Let me show you another way to, this particular lace that I have has a decorative edge, but I really am not going to maintain that edge. I want to sew it and trim off that edge, but I still do not want to remove the finished edge of the satin ribbon. So now I will go ahead and this time cut, and what I'm doing is placing the edge that is to be cut beyond the edge that I don't want to be cut.
Okay, because that's going to be cut off, and the other one you don't want to remove.
Exactly. And again, I'll hold on to my thread chain here, just so that, especially using the metallic thread, it tends to curl back under your stitch. Once I start and the fabric comes out, I no longer have to be concerned about that. But now what I'm doing is guiding this straight edge of the satin ribbon just to the left side of the blade so it's not cutting, and then I'm guiding the decorative edge of this other lace so that it's actually trimming away that finished edge.
And you know what I'm seeing too, Anne, you could actually use that trimmed edge somewhere else. I'm thinking, oh my.
Waste not, want not.
Waste not, want not. That's right.
Sure.
That's just so beautiful and straight.
And now you can see the beginning of that fabric edge.
That is
and again,
really
as you start
beautiful.
to press that.
So you don't have to be upset if your lace has a trim that maybe wasn't, that you really didn't want to be there.
Exactly.
Just cut it off. And look here, this is what I think is exciting
Isn't
too.
that fun?
Oh my goodness, I can think of all kinds of uses
all
for
sorts
that.
of things you could use for that. Now, and of course, if I have two layers that need both edges, because they're both scalloped edges, I would go ahead and place those. And I always have to remind myself, wrong sides together, and you would serge those off. This is a piece that actually has quite a large scalloped edge, so I would go ahead and place this trim so that it runs just to, can you see that? The inside of those scallops.
Yeah, because you're going to take off all of those scallops on that edge.
Right. And as I was working with different laces, this one, you know, it's just such a gorgeous piece of ribbon, and I really wanted to get this embroidered flower in there. But it seemed like this really wasn't going to work. When I did serge the edges on this, I had to be careful to make sure that the needle ran within or inside the selvage edge. Otherwise, it tended to fall right off. So you want to probably practice with a few of the ribbons just to see the stability of the edges as you're attaching those pieces, because you don't want to put it all together and then find out that they start falling apart.
Now, what about attaching this piece right here that has a ribbon on it? And show me how that's done.
Okay.
It has a ribbon
now,
on it.
Now, actually, what I did,
isn't that
pleated
fun? Ribbon in the middle. Yeah,
yes,
that's
I mean,
really
it looks
interesting.
Like, it looks like I did a lot of work, but I really haven't. I love
called
things that look like I've done a lot of work.
Purchase at the store, huh?
Yes.
You know, I love things that look like I've done a lot of work too, and that's one of the things that's so exciting about using the serger and these gorgeous metallic threads. It looks like you really
have done a lot of work.
Too, wasn't it?
Well, it really is. It's easy, and sometimes the fun part is that creative energy that you put into combining the laces or having some really neat finds, you know, and finding a way to do it instead of going to a lot of extra work. You know, you can get to the fun part, the fast part. One other thing I wanted to mention, that as you're pressing each of these pieces, do be aware of the type of lace that you have or the trim that you have. I used a very low setting on the iron, and I did use steam to really get that rolled edge to lay flat. But I can speak from experience. I've also kind of melted some of my pieces, but that was okay. You know, it was great. I just serged it right off.
That is really pretty.
Isn't that pretty?
All of those trims put together make such an interesting look.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I've seen people do too is combine new laces with antique laces and little pieces that you have. I really like to use little pieces too. This is a perfect way to create something wonderful. Use all that creativity.
Exactly, and those favorite little pieces. That's what I love about this. And once you create your piece, I mean, really, it's up to you what size that finished piece of fabric is going to be. So you can make a very small little pillow, you know, and just sew some of those beautiful trims that you have, or, you know, make a large piece.
And thank you so very much
You're
for
welcome,
being here
Martha.
today.
Thank you.
And now I have a beautiful, wonderful Serger pillow for you for your home decorating item today. And I just love that bolster pillow. Now I have a question. Is it easy to make?
Yes, it is. Well, you already saw, I showed you some of the process and really in creating that yardage. And so using sort of that same concept. And I'll show you step by step just how to create this particular bolster. And it'll probably give you some ideas on maybe some other projects you can do by creating your own yardage.
All right.
Okay.
Just beautiful.
Thank you. First of all, as I showed you, we joined a row of laces together, laces and trims, and depending on the project that you are making, you can see that I have uneven edges, so I'll have to trim those edges. Now I've done that to this side here. For this bolster, I'm going to take this, and this is approximately 15 inches long by 22 inches wide.
Okay.
I'm going to take this piece, place my two layer or ends wrong sides together, and then serge to create a cylinder. Okay, so that's the beginning of the cylinder. Okay, next I want to create or sew two more cylinders, and really there is a cylinder. I'll cut a ribbon the circumference of that cylinder and serge those ends together. I'm going to join that to my panel, my base panel, and I'm cutting, or I did cut, a length of fabric about 1.5 times longer than the circumference, and I clean finished this edge. In other words, I took the rolled edge setting with the metallic thread and just quickly finished that edge. Okay?
Well, it makes it so pretty too, that metallic finished edge.
Yes, it really does. Now I gathered, and I sewed that into a tube as well, or a cylinder. I've gathered the edge.
Okay.
Okay, so this is my third cylinder.
Okay.
And then I took and placing the ribbons, and this one I've already stitched on, placing the cylinder of ribbon within my lace cylinder. I'll serge those wrong sides together, serge those two edges using that rolled edge setting. Then the next step is to sew the gathered edge in the same way, placing wrong sides together. If you can see that, I'll just flip that in there. Wrong sides together, again, so that I have the decorative stitching on the outside.
And then?
Then I just take and finish the end here. There's a variety of ways you can do it. One of the easiest ways that I found is just to go ahead and tack a ribbon a few inches from this edge, deciding on how long you want your bolster. Tack it with the conventional sewing machine. I'll use a little zigzag stitch or a bar tack. Tack that on, and then, now let me go under this way, I simply tie that together. You can see how it's beginning to create the end of this bolster.
Well, that is so cute and just really easy. And you know what? Those kinds of projects we really like, and I bet most of you viewers at home like easy, fun projects too, that are also beautiful. And now I have a wonderful craft for you. This is a beautiful tray which I believe you will enjoy for entertaining. This particular tray, I have chosen a beautiful pink fabric, and the decorative trim is a little bit of lace here, a little bit of lace here, and then I've just put a few little roses there with a ribbon around it to make it pretty. Those actually were not even attached, so you can use the tray a lot of different ways. Okay, I begin with a purchased just a yellow rattan tray from the craft store, the discount house. Then, in this case, I have used a beautiful piece of pink brocade fabric, cut a circle around an oval that will fit in and around. Now you see I've cut it where it will actually come all the way up on the edge. And you know what I forgot to tell you? If you want to, you can go ahead and paint. This is a craft paint. You can paint the outside and make it really pretty, which is what I did. Then after that paint dries, you go ahead and cut this piece of fabric, get it where it fits all the way around, and glue it all the way up the edges. All right, now to really make this tray waterproof, I have a piece of contact paper next, which I will peel that away. I'm not going to do it for you right now, but I'll peel it away and then I will glue it to my tray. That gives me another added coat of protection. Then after the contact paper is down, I'm going to take, in this case, the Cluny, beautiful ecru Cluny lace and glue it down also over the fabric and onto the top of the tray, so that will give me a little trim for the outside. Next, I've used a narrow piece of Cluny lace. I'll come down here right where the lip goes up on the tray, and I will glue that down also. Now the last step for this would be to take decoupage and coat the whole thing 1 or 2 or maybe even 3 times, however much you want to do it, and that decoupage will completely finish and protect the whole tray inside and out. Now I have a really wonderful doll dress to share with you. You are going to love our little doll dress today. Actually, it's a dress with a pinafore over it like we're using for the whole series. The little dress is handkerchief linen, the pinafore is organdy. The little decorative stitches on the top of the pinafore and run down around the waistline, and the ruffles are adorable. Here's what I want you to look at. This little ruffle is finished on both sides with a pink serger decorative trim using a stretchy nylon thread, and then it's stitched down to the dress using a beautiful feather stitch. There are 3 rows of ruffles on this cute little pinafore which comes down, and then the little linen dress peeks out. Making that pinafore is really very easy, and I'd like to share with you how. First of all, you're going to take your pinafore skirt, just simply fold up a hem. Later on we'll feather stitch the ruffle down there. Now to finish these ruffles, you're going to use a stretchy nylon thread in your serger. You're going to serge one edge, and then we're going to serge the other edge. And see, that's the ruffle. It's already finished. Then I'm going to run 2 rows of gathering stitches in to my ruffle, sort of at the top. And you remember, on gathering rows, I always use the bobbin threads to pull the gathers. So I'll gather my ruffle up here, and then I'm going to, now let me see if you can see this real closely. I'm going to feather stitch down this ruffle to the pinafore. Did you see here I feather stitched right in between these 2 gathering rows? The feather stitching is right in between, so then I can pull out those gathering rows. And guess what? I've also hemmed the little pinafore at the same time I've stitched it down. And then I will stitch the other 2 rows of serger ruffles on too. Our little dress for the series is really not a dress at all, but a dress with a pinafore over it. This pinafore is absolutely precious. The dress is a wool challis navy with a little ruffle around the neckline, and the pinafore is so cute. It just has several trims, Swiss and French, stitched together. What I really want to share with you is this adorable skirt treatment. It has a tiny baby feather stitch, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 folded pin tucks, another baby feather stitch that holds in a double hem, and then lace on the bottom. That is a really cute way to finish off the hem of any dress, I think. First of all, fold up your hem. Then straight stitch across it just to hold the hem in. Next, I've drawn on my fold lines, my tuck lines, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Fold them over, and these are about 1/4 inch tucks. Then this decorative stitching is a wing needle entredot stitch that finishes that hem. Remember, I straight stitched it first. Then after I have done all 5 of my tucks, here is a wing needle stitch up here, the wing needle entredot stitch here with a double hem which is already folded in and stitched, and then the lace for the bottom is simply put on right underneath and zigzag to finish it. Now the finish on the little neckline of this pinafore was simply trims, Swiss trims, French trims, Swiss trims, zigzag together, and then you have the gathered French lace, which, if you'll come down here with me, you butt the gathered French lace and zigzag it together too. Next, I have one of our beautiful angel quilt squares for you. The quilt square today really isn't a quilt square, it's the treatment in the corners, the 4 corners of the quilt. This adorable little angel has her lace-shaped wings and her little lace-shaped tips of the wings. But what I want to share with you today is how to do this beautiful little skirt, which is made of an English netting, and however you could make your own with today's fancy decorative sewing machines. So, I like to use this little pleater. It makes pleating so easy to do. And I'm going to pleat, here's the English netting I'm using. I'm going to pleat going over 2 pleats on this particular one. Now, it's much easier to use this little pleater if you'll take a little straight edge of some kind. This is a point turner, but you can also use just a ruler if you don't have a point turner, or anything that you can slip along there and make those little knife pleats go in there perfectly. After I have pleated my skirt, I'm going to take a mixture of vinegar and water and spray it. That helps to set the pleats and make them more permanent. And then I will bring my iron in and iron this shot of steam, and let it dry completely before I remove it. All right, after I remove it, before I go back to my angel to put it on the tips of the corners of my quilt, I will simply pin in these pleats. You see how nicely those pleats are in there? Now, I'll bring the angel back over here. After I get these pleats in here, which you've just seen how I've done that, then I will begin to shape the angel skirt. Pull the string off there. Of course, when we sew, we never get strings on anything, do we? I'm going to shape the angel skirt, slip it up underneath the lace-shaped wings, and of course trim it off. And then and then I'll tack it. As I go along here, I'll do a little tacking. You don't have to sew the whole thing. I'll just tack it around at strategic points, and you can see this beautiful little lace-shaped angel that is in the corner of this beautiful angel quilt for the series. Won't you come along with me to my attic where I have something really special for you? Joe and I were shopping at a flea market in Paris, and I walked through the stalls. Now, you know I love to shop flea markets, and I especially love flea markets in Paris, and we found this beautiful blouse. It has the most wonderful details. 4 folded tucks, 1, 2, 3, 4, and by the way, the fabric is a gorgeous, gorgeous heavy linen, not even a handkerchief linen. The embroidery on the front of the blouse is magnificent. I could almost call this my 4-leaf clover blouse, because the embroidery, all done by hand with those beautiful eyelets, really does look like there are 4-leaf clovers on the blouse. The sleeve is just as pretty as the rest of the blouse. It has a 4-leaf clover on it also, with the little eyelets in the middle and the little French knots. As is typical in turn-of-the-century blouses, the back is just as pretty as the front. As you can see, the 4 tucks are on either side and run down the back of the blouse with those beautiful buttons there. And I certainly hope whoever owned this blouse had someone to help her button those buttons when she got dressed in the morning. For our Sewing for the Heart today, I have a wonderful letter from the San Antonio Alamo Smocking Guild in San Antonio, Texas. The letter is from Marcia Todaro. Dear Martha, I would like to share with you the San Antonio, Texas Alamo Smocking Guild's Gift from the Heart project. We smock approximately 80 infant bonnets a year and donate them to Any Baby Can, the ABC organization. ABC is a charitable referral agency for newborns with birth defects and/or illnesses requiring further medical care. We feel our bonnets provide emotional support to families in a very stressful situation who oftentimes lack monetary means for such amenities. It is also a way of sharing our God-given talents with these newborns who, of course, are the ultimate gift from the Lord. Marcia goes on to say that not only do they smock little girls' bonnets for these babies, but that they have a boy's bonnet pattern that they use also, so the little boy babies can have a bonnet also. Marcia, I just thank you so much for the work that you and your Smocking Arts Guild friends out in San Antonio are doing in caring and nurturing not only these beautiful babies, but also their families. It is so good to know that so many of you are using your sewing machines and your most precious commodity, which of course is your time, to sew for those less fortunate or those in trouble. Thank you for joining me in my sewing room today. I hope you'll be with me next time.